Hey there, Foster Fierce family. Welcome to Interview with a Foster Kid, where we dive into the raw and unapologetic stories of Foster Fierce alumni, driven by a passion for creating a better future for our foster siblings around the world. I'm your host, Amira Therese, and I want to hear your story too. If you're ready to share, reach out to me at iwafosterkid@gmail.com, and don't hold back. We tell stories on this show so honest, they'll make your caseworkers blush. Now it's time for our next Foster Fierce episode. Listen mindfully and please enjoy. Hey there, Foster Fierce family. I'm back with another episode of Interview with a Foster Kid, and today we have an amazing guest. Sharon Dunlevy has dedicated her life to foster children, to advocating for us, to training people who are interested in foster care. She's bringing awareness to the educational needs of children in foster care through speaking, writing, and collaborating. And today she's doing it on this podcast. I couldn't be more grateful. Sharon, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Amira. Well, I'm real excited to be on here. And I think you and I had a conversation on email about how few podcasts there are that are specifically not just focused on foster care, but run by former foster students. And so I'm real excited that I get to speak with you from your lived experience. I am not a foster care alumni, but I have been doing this for about 7 years. I actually was a children's minister for many years and almost 20. But then I wanted to kind of reach out. My heart really has always been with special education. That was my training. And I actually wanted to start a special education program in my church, and they just weren't going for it. So I kind of decided, all right, I'm going to leave ministry and reach out to more kids. And so I kind of bounced around, but because of my education background, I saw a job opening for an educational advocate at a foster care licensing agency here in Indianapolis, and really found my heart. Right? Like, I just fell in love with the kids. I fell in love with the process of like helping them get through school and have good outcomes. You guys all know foster kids don't always graduate. They don't get that diploma. They have to go back and get a GED.
Yeah. Honestly, I want to let all of you out there who have gotten your GED, I want to let you know, or who are going to, because I did it just to get out of the system. When I was 16, I dropped out of high school forcibly and with a lot of attitude, went and scored in the top 90th and above percentile in my GED. I just want to let you know, there's a lot of stigma behind it, but if you can get your GED, life's been throwing a lot at you, get it. But there are programs out there to help you graduate if that's your path.
Yes, and sometimes traditional school is not the appropriate place for a child in foster care because they don't understand trauma. And that's a big piece of what I do. So when I took this job at this licensing agency, their mentality was like, oh, you need to get all of our kids up into like B's and A's. They need to catch up. So if they're 2 grades behind, we want them to catch up all of a sudden. And that wasn't realistic. And I had to kind of get in there and revamp their expectations. So yes, they needed help, and maybe they needed an IEP, an individualized education plan, right? Maybe they needed special education services or a 504 plan, which was more for behaviors. And I would help with that. But I also had to help them understand catching up to 2 grades is almost impossible. Right? And especially the older you get. So when you get to like the age 16, if you are 2 or 3 grades behind your peers, it's more likely you're going to drop out of school because you're just feeling like all you're doing is schoolwork. You never get to have fun.
Right.
And a lot of the kids that I worked with, that's where they were. And no wonder they didn't, do well. The schools didn't understand them. They felt behind because they were behind. Like they weren't going to school on a regular basis or whatever was causing them. Or they were just dealing with trauma and school was secondary in their mind. And so I had to open their doors for like alternative schools. Several of the school systems around here do have like an alternative program where you can be in a smaller group, doing more stuff online, things like that, or going to Job Corps and getting your GED and job training at the same time. Going into a high school that has a vocational program. A lot of foster kids are not going to go to college, and that may not be a reasonable expectation anyways, because again, college is stressful. And if you haven't been able to overcome all your trauma symptoms, college can feel really overwhelming. And
Absolutely.
again, colleges don't understand trauma. They don't necessarily have programs specifically for foster kids to help them transition. And so that is kind of what I do. And I really found a heart for this because I feel like our kids could be doing better, but we don't talk about those educational needs of children in foster
Absolutely.
care. And
Yeah.
so, yes, so Amira, you said that, I'm training other people to be advocates, and that is what I'm doing. What I do is incredibly unique. There
Yes.
aren't very many people that go out there and say they're an advocate for children in foster care for education. They just don't say that. They don't even talk about it. We talk so much about trauma and everything else. We don't talk about how that affects their educational outcomes. But I was just reading an article yesterday that reinforced the numbers that I've been quoting. 20 to 25% of foster care alumni will experience homelessness sometime before they're 21. And a lot of it has to do with we're not helping them transition out, and we're not keeping their services long enough.
For sure.
18 years old is too
We're
young
still
to like
children.
cut off.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll say something about the statistics because they've increased in the last 4 years. And now we're at 46% aging directly into homelessness. And then by the mid 20s, about 50% of that, of the 46%, are still experiencing housing instability and other issues.
Yes.
So that, and it does go back to education. I'll tell you a little anecdote about me. I went through those alternative schools, those night schools, and I will let you know the irony here is the same people that couldn't handle me and my education were calling me a genius, but they were attaching it to negative connotations. Like I wasn't a genius. I was Jeffrey Dahmer, who apparently was also a genius. I don't know. So they would akin me to these like sociopaths. So they would say my genius was rooted in evil, basically. So I was bored of school. Absolutely. I knew all of it. And the math, I just resented. It wasn't how I expressed myself. And I wasn't interested in it. But but school was absolutely boring for me. I had so much life beyond the other students there. They were so boring, their problems, their issues. I couldn't relate to somebody that was yelling at their mom on the phone because she didn't bring her pom poms to cheer practice. I'm like, if my mom answers, I'm having a great day. So I had no relationship with the kids my age. And to give myself a little bit of benefit, I was far beyond my grade levels. My problem was the truancies, consistency, because I'm going to different schools. I talked my way after I dropped out of 8th grade to get a job. I talked my way back into the 9th grade for social reasons and was so convincing. I didn't miss a beat. I just missed a whole year of school, talked my way right through it. So, I mean, a lot of kids are going through alternative schools and losing. So I didn't have any respect for any educators because why are you moving me? Why am I an ISS? Because I gave a teacher who said something negative to me a bit of a mouthful, but they're chastising me for being in foster care. And now I live in ISS. So those kind of things, behavioral issues, they are taken out of context with foster kids.
Yes.
We're not
They are.
crappy people who are trying to ruin your day. We just get looked at even by teachers as the one who probably will. So they get ahead of it.
Yeah.
They.
Well, and what it disturbs me about that, and I've said this to a lot of different people, you're blaming the victim for being a victim. So we do this in our society a lot. If you ever look into stuff about trafficking, sex trafficking, the reason that children who are sex trafficked don't come forward is because the laws are written in such a way that if they come forward, they're jailed as well as the trafficker.
Not only that, if you come forward, CPS won't take you back. You're going to have to, they won't
Right.
let you back into the homes. I experienced that. And
Yeah.
I got back and I had to have a lady who found some sort of compassion within her take me to the CPS office after they refused.
Hmm.
I was homeless for
Hmm.
4 months at 17 because they refused to have me back until I got somebody else involved.
And that's ridiculous. Why are we blaming the victims? So when you go into a school and you're a foster kid, what I've heard is, yes, the teachers automatically think, "Oh my gosh, this child's going to be a problem." Well, they're going to be a problem because you don't understand trauma. You're the one. I mean, it's all about our own perceptions, our own ability to relate to people, right? So
Yes,
I can own what my behaviors are, what my reactions are. A teacher can own what their behaviors are and their actions are. They're not going to be able to change the child. The child is
absolutely.
who they are. You have to accept the child for where they are and then meet them. And a lot of teachers, and I am not going to denigrate teachers because obviously
Sure.
I was a teacher and I have that background and
And it's
their
not their
lives are
fault.
hard.
It's not their fault that
No,
this part of education hasn't been. I mean,
right.
legislation is to blame. I don't even blame foster carers
Yes.
because of my bad
No.
experiences. Why were they allowed? Why were they allowed?
Yes.
So, teachers,
Right.
I don't blame anybody for a lack of education. But as soon as we lift that veil of ignorance, then the onus
Yes.
becomes theirs.
Right. And so, I do a lot of push for let's get trauma informed care into our schools because it's not just foster kids. We live in a world where kids are exposed to so much on social media that every child now has a CAN score. It may not be as high as a child who has experienced foster
Yeah.
care, but
Yeah.
because of school shootings, because they are exposed to this, because of COVID, all of those things, we have all this trauma that we have been exposed to.
And if I
And
may, I'm so sorry, Sharon.
yeah,
Also, the biological kids who weren't removed from their parents. I have
yes.
half siblings. Okay, I used to envy them
Hmm.
because they stayed with my mother. I don't know why. I knew what she did. But there are biological kids out there experiencing trauma in silence who aren't being put in the
Yes.
foster care system. So there's that
Yes.
too.
Absolutely. And we criminalize poverty. So we're removing children for poverty who may
Yes,
not need to.
you are right.
Yeah, what happens is these kids are not given the chances they need because they're being criminalized, they're being blamed for being a
Yes,
victim.
yes,
Our school systems are where our teachers are overworked. They have too many kids in their classroom. There are no more instructional aides because they've had to cut those costs. There's all of this other stuff. And then higher education programs might have a teacher take one 3 credit course on trauma informed care.
right.
That's not enough. It's just like a child. If a teacher learns that they've got a child with autism in their classroom, what do they think of? Immediately, they're going to think, oh no, I've
Problems.
got Rain Man in my classroom, or I've got child who's going to, constantly disrupt my class because they don't know how to be social. I mean,
And then
it is.
they
We
put
have
that
our internal
relationship out
mindset.
there. Yeah, that energy becomes
Yes,
reciprocal. Like when I think I'm a problem, what's the point of not being
right.
one? I mean, you're going
Even
to kick me out
I have
eventually.
a Right? I have a 23-year-old child, and when they were in kindergarten, I used to help out in the classroom a lot, and the kindergarten teacher constantly said something about, well, I know the boys are going to act up, so they need more support, or they need to be watched more,
I hate that.
and they would say it in front of the class. So of course, what did the boys think? Well, she thinks I'm going to act up. I'm going to act up because, I mean, obviously that's how a boy is supposed to act. And it's like,
That
no,
ruins so many boys. I so hope our generation has graduated stigmatizing boys just for
right?
existing as boys because
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about. And boys will be boys out the door, teach. Out the door.
right. Toys and girl toys and all of these things. So it isn't just foster kids, I guess is what we're saying, right? But you guys have an extra stigma. Children who have been in foster care often lose their children into foster care at some point. I mean, I think the number is over 50%
It is.
that their children will experience foster care at some point. And it's not because you guys are bad parents. It's because you didn't learn those, you didn't have the relationships or you were stigmatized. So, one of the things that I've been looking at and I've been learning, and the reason I focus so much on educational outcomes is because it's related to what happens when you guys age out. And that's what a lot of people don't talk about. They
That's what we
talk about
need.
what happens in foster care, but what happens when they age out? And what are we doing to make sure that you're going to be successful
We're just
adults? And we
outside.
don't talk about it.
We're
Yeah,
just
they don't talk
outside and
about
we
this.
don't know what to do either. Who do we go to? That's what I want. I love what you're doing, Sharon, but what I want
Hmm.
is for there to be a clear way for people to get a hold of a service like this because I didn't have to be
Yes.
homeless. I didn't have to fall into the arms of the first drug dealer who was the cutest guy on the mountain. I didn't have to be pregnant by the time I
Right.
was 18, and I
Right.
certainly didn't have to have a felony before I was 19. I didn't need any of those things to
Oh,
happen. I was an intelligent, creative, ambitious, and by the way, not the sociopath that people labeled me as. I wasn't violent unless you started the fight, and then I wasn't going to die not trying. So, I mean,
hmm.
I would have needed a resource. I did need a resource
Hmm.
that would have given me a more positive path than the one I took that plagued me for the next 20 years of my life.
Right.
Because get over a felony and get an apartment, why don't you? Good luck. Hope you don't have to find a roommate
Right.
like I did and live
Right.
there subletting secretively because you're too criminal to really exist there legally. So that's the
Right.
life that we can avoid for people.
Yeah. Well, and what I also do is I am networking with other people. So you're asking, where can you go for a resource? I know of a group called Foster Greatness, and they are creating an app where if it's kind of like a 211 for foster kids. And it's specifically for former foster kids. And this guy, Scott Henderson, that I met with, is fantastic. So he started a program where he was training foster kids in order to be able to get a job after they age out. Well, what he found was these kids kept coming back to him. They kept getting fired. And it was because of where he was sending them, even though those places were saying, yes, we'll be trauma informed, yes, we will treat them differently, they didn't. They didn't
Right.
understand. So
Right.
Scott owned a business and he took that business and he employs foster kids.
Oh,
He created this. Yes, exactly. It
I'm
brings
sorry.
tears to your
I'm
eyes,
so
doesn't
weak.
it? No, it brings tears to your eyes
Yeah.
because he was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to use my business to help foster kids learn job skills. Where do you learn job skills? Right? Like, where is that taught to you guys ever?
It's
And
not.
that's something I trained my foster parents on. I trained my foster parents on building independent living skills, all the way from self care to job skills early. You can be teaching them as preschoolers, and I train my foster parents on this. Let's make sure that remember that they are going to age out one day, and unlike our own kids who can come back, my 23-year-old lives in our basement because the housing market in
Oh my
Indianapolis
God.
is
I
really
want my 22-year-old. I'm getting a basement because I want her back so bad.
right.
I miss her so much.
But my kid has that option. Foster kids don't always have that
Right.
option,
And so does
right?
mine. And that is such
And
a good
so,
point. Yes.
yeah, so foster greatness, if you look at foster greatness, it is a tool for former foster kids on those resources,
So
how to get
just
housing help.
just for our audience, I want to let you know that I am including this and all links, all people to follow that Sharon mentions and Sharon herself in the description below. So don't worry about remembering all of these things. I'll have it nicely organized for you and make sure you get those resources that you need.
Yeah, yeah, because it is so important that we remember that transition period is probably the hardest time. And that's why foster kids experience helplessness before 21.
Yes.
Why 26% or something have children by the edge of 21. I mean, it's because we know our frontal lobe is not completely
Developed.
formed until we're
Yeah.
25.
We know that
And
about
yet
our
we're
own kids,
having
but when it
foster
comes to
care.
foster kids, they're like,
Yeah,
okay, go
it's
outside. And then it's like, wait,
go
when the
with
street
what?
lights come on, can I come back in? Nope, not this time. That's how
No,
it is.
and that's yeah, it's ridiculous. We don't help society. This article that I read the other day, it says that every foster care alumni actually costs $300,000 a year because we don't support them.
There's
Like
your
how much
incentive,
is that?
people.
You know?
There's your incentive for the other
Yeah.
side of the aisle that could give a crap about social issues. Okay. I'm not trying to be mean, but there's your incentive. You want to save some money, save some kids. We don't need to be the struggle of society. We don't need to be on welfare, but we are. Okay. We are needing every social service out there because we have no way to navigate this life ourselves. Because, like I said, when I was in care, I had this little bubble I lived in. I didn't even know another race other than mine struggled. Then you sent me out. You think I know financial crap? Do you think that they gave me job services? Do you think they prepared me for a life outside of the walls? No, they were hoping that my life outside of the walls would be in prison because they were afraid of me. So they were just hoping I would rejoin some other walls. I'm telling you right now, this is such an important thing. And I love the point that you just made. Look at the numbers if it's all that brings you in. 300,000 a year per
Yeah.
alumni. So if the incentive has to be fiscal, there it is, guys.
Right. No, but you're right. And that sometimes that fiscal, and that's why I know that number, because sometimes that fiscal amount is all that gets into the
Thank
American
you.
brain. You know?
Thank
So you
you.
were talking also about like the social aspect. And so one of the other things, I actually just uploaded this class into my membership site, but I talked to my foster parents about raising compassionate kids because let's be real, we don't live in a compassionate society right now. America's the absolute opposite of compassionate right now, and it's just getting worse.
It really
And
is.
so you talked about, what about this next generation? Hopefully this next generation will learn. We have to teach them.
Yes,
Compassion is sort of ingrained in us, but if it is not taught and not encouraged, we lose compassion as we grow older. We start to
absolutely.
look at everybody from our own lenses. So again, that implicit biases all start to play in. We're not in an emotionally intelligent society. We're not a society that likes to look at our own feelings and thoughts and say, why am I reacting like this? Why am I getting angry at this? We all are triggered? Foster kids, in some ways, are better equipped to deal with triggers if they had good fostering services as they were growing up. If they
Took me
had
20
therapy.
years and I'm still dealing with
Yeah,
my triggers today. The reason I'm not a foster parent is because I'd go 0 to 60 real quick. I'd be saving some lives. But I want to say real quick to our audience, you guys know I just had Tristan Smith, the author of Against All Odds, on my show. And Sharon just said something that he said, life is about 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. So you just kind of
yeah.
fell right into that. Buy that book if you want a blueprint of how to deal with foster kids and really how to deal with your own emotions. But go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah. Yeah, it all becomes about us. And in fact, I'm reading a book from a man called Dr. Cloud, and he writes a lot of really good books about thinking but right now reading a book about like bonding and boundaries, and he talks about how the only thing we can own is our own reactions, right? Again, like I said early on, we can't change our child's and as much as we'd like to, and but all we can do is not react. Now, am I good at this? Absolutely not. I'm
Me
probably one of the
too.
most
I'm a
reactive
reactor.
people you could find out there.
I'm a reactor.
So yes, me too. And if you talk about fight, flight, or freeze, I am a fighter, right? Right. That's why
Like
I'm
you.
on
You know,
here.
there's so much tea we need to drink together one day.
Right. Exactly. But we fighters tend to be vocal and we tend to like get out there. So yes, I love doing these podcasts because I'm fighting and I'm seeing what's going on and I'm seeing what's happening. And if nothing else from this podcast, let's quit blaming the victim. Let's look and see how we can support the victim. What are we like? Look at our society. What is something that we can change in our community that would cause things to be better? I was on the board of a youth assistance program here in my town outside of Indianapolis. And what we did was we worked with the schools and the police officers and the school resource officers to identify kids and families that were in danger of getting into the system and got them services before their children were taken away or taken to jail, or the parents fell into poverty, or the parents fell into drugs and alcohol. We provided those services
May
so that
I?
we were being proactive instead of
Yeah.
reactive. Yes, go
I want to
ahead.
comment on that because that's so important. Like, I always look back at my mom as irredeemable. Like, she could not have been helped, but could she have? I mean, she was stressed. Okay. She, in those moments where she wasn't a demon possessed monster, she was amazing. She was creative. She was a beautiful singer. She was an amazing musician, could play the guitar like nobody else. She was often, when she met my dad, he was a music manager and he thought she was just like Stevie Nicks, who he knew personally. And if you hear her sing Stevie Nicks, you'll think Stevie's in the room. So I wonder often, how could somebody with that much creativity, talent, and beauty inside of them turn into the monster that I experienced? Because I experienced both ends. And let me tell you, it took me becoming a mother to realize how very on the edge we always are. When you are a single mother, okay, and I'm not talking about the mom that can say, go tell your dad. Okay. When that's taken away from us, it's go away. You can't say go tell your dad. It's stressful to be a single mother. Now, do I excuse the abuse and all of those things? No, but do I think if I was going to be nice, if I was going to be giving to my mother's character, I do think that what she needed was financial support, that what she needed was help. And I do remember her struggle, her stress. And so you bring up a good point there. Preventative is possible. And let me not forget to mention the evil, okay, legislative piece of 1997, okay, the Safe Adoptions and Families Act, incentivizing our parents falling apart, our parents becoming incarcerated for punitive reasons, and us and being incarcerated for at least 6 months. And that's is exactly how long it takes for your child to become a ward of the state. And they were doing that in conjunction with privatized foster care system, privatized prison system, and they're making about $5,000 to $33,000 a year per child. The state gets it, carers never see it, the child never sees it, and it is matched by Social Security. But there's that fiscal incentive again, but preventative measures, holy cow. I mean, I like to maybe fantasize that my mom could have been saved because I've seen the parts of her that were worth saving.
Yeah. Well, and we're all human, right? We all have human fallacies. And your mom grew up in a generation where they didn't talk about mental health. It's that idea of, yes, you want to forgive, but you're never going to forget, right?
Right.
And for your own mental health, forgiveness may come, but you may also have to have those boundaries, just like I was talking about this Dr. Cloud book. Sometimes those boundaries are what is really important. And so he talks a lot about the idea of separating ourselves from our parents and
I
that
have
those
done so.
expectations from our parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes that means you have to put a break. I mean, my husband and I, his family on his dad's side were all alcoholics. He's
Yeah.
the
Mine
only
too.
one who's ever admitted that he is an alcoholic. They never even admitted it. We had to stop taking our kid up to visit his grandmother, and we told his dad, we just can't do it. His brother and sister were coming in with their partners, not just drunk, but on high. And we were like, okay, this does not, because Donnie had admitted he was an alcoholic. He doesn't drink as much anymore. And we just had to tell his dad, we cannot take our kid up there. That is not what we want them exposed to. And his dad supported us. But
Understood.
it's
Yeah.
still
Understandable.
that separation. So when you talk and you look
Hmm.
back onto your own family, it's hard to forget, but just know that you're not your mom, right? You're not, that's not who you are. And so anybody out there, you're not your parents. There is, I know, a sense sometimes of, oh, if they were bad, I'm going to be bad too. Like there's always that fear of, am I going to become like them? We're all made up of different behaviors.
Yes.
Nobody is all good. Nobody is all bad, right? We all have things that are weaknesses and strengths, but
Yeah,
the more we can focus on those strengths, but it takes time.
it
It
does.
takes time to come out of that sense of I was abused, I was so put down, I was so all of this. And that separation from your parents can be so important because you can look at what are their strengths. What were they good at? Your parents were good at music, and obviously that's something they passed on to you,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
was something that you inherited from them, and you would never want that to go away.
No,
You'd want that musicality in your life. So there are good things that come out of your parents. That doesn't excuse the fact that they abused you,
no,
that they
exactly.
used drugs. That
I mean,
doesn't excuse those.
one of my most impressive talents, because I like to really build myself up now, is my writing. And there's no way that didn't come from my mother. She can write a letter that will both lift you up and cripple you. She is good with words.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you read her, even her insults are so eloquent, they need a couple of text paragraphs. They're just so mean, but they're so well
Yeah.
written. You're like, shit, I'm not blocking you. I'm a writer too. Like, this is good.
Right. Right.
So, but I
Yes.
had to learn, that I did. And it's hard for foster kids. That separation from your parents when you're a bio kid is college. You go to college, hating your parents, you come back their best friend. I'm experiencing it myself, and that's the normal way of things. And we don't get that. In fact, after foster care, we've been separated from our parents so much. Usually, we will seek them out, and it's not the healthiest choice. So let's talk a little bit more about that from your perspective.
Sure. I have a student that he's kind of my success story. I tell about him a lot. Was in residential from like 4 years old all the way up to ninth grade. And he came out and was put into a foster home, one of our best foster homes, I will say. White boy put in with a black family, which was very interesting.
The
And he
only
had a
family
hard
I
time
ever
with that
liked,
first.
only mother I ever had in foster care was a black woman. She took care of me. She
Yeah.
fed me. She cared about me. She
Yes.
stood up to my
It's
caseworker.
cultural. They don't think about that. And he had a hard time, but oh my gosh, I just talked to him. But we got him into high school. The residential had lost his ninth grade credit, so he had to redo his ninth grade year. But we got him graduated half a year late. And in Indiana, you can stay in foster care until 23 under what's called a collaborative care. And so it's not like
What?
you're at the home. Yes. So what they did
That
was they
needs to be
used the Family
everywhere.
First funds. Right? And so they used Family First funds and they got him a roommate and his own apartment, and helped him as long as he was working or in school half time, you can stay in this collaborative care. So he's going to turn 24 this year, but when he turned 23, he was out, but he had a full-time job by then and had money saved, so he has his own apartment, he's got a dog, all of
Hmm.
these things. And when he got his own apartment, he called me and my husband and were like, "You have to come see my apartment." So we went down and saw him. He went and lived with his dad, but his dad was still using drugs.
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
he actually did not stay in collaborative care at first. He was like, "No, I'm going to try it on my own. I'm going to go home." And he called up his caseworker and said, "I want collaborative care because he's still using drugs. His sister was off the wall, all of this stuff." And
I
he
wish I'd
had to
had
make
that
that
phone number.
separation.
I'm so grateful to that program. And I hope that more people watching this understand if you are in a position to spread this like wildfire. When I went back and experienced my family, if I'd had a phone number to call, I wouldn't have experienced so much of what I had. And it was devastating. These are things you don't say in polite company. And they're things that I have to live with for the rest of my life because I did not have any other options. The streets were my option.
Right.
That was it.
Well, this was only raised to 23 in 2018. This is
Wow.
under that Family First Services Protection Prevention Act. And so the age limit was only raised to 23 in 2018.
Just
It
Indiana?
was 21. No. So every state has the option to keep that program all the way up to 23. Not all states do it. Indiana does. I teach for Ohio. They do. I've had conversations with other states. Some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them it's 21 and it's
I have
done.
a
They've
I have
never
a
adopted
question on the rules here.
Mhm.
Say you're a kid in Arizona, and Arizona is not very nice to its foster kids. Sorry, guys, but I'm going to say Arizona is a very defeating place to be defeated. Let's say I'm from Arizona and I am aging outside. My family doesn't work out. Are these states welcoming to kids that are from outside of the state, but foster kids that might need this collaborative care?
I don't know. I don't know how that works because I think you have to be on that state's system,
Award.
because yeah, yeah, you would have to be the ward of the state. Now, what I would challenge you to do is look one to see if Arizona does have anything. They just may not even know about it. The problem we find is caseworkers don't always know the rules because they turn over so fast, right? Most
Tell me
case
about
managers
it.
for whatever Department of Child Welfare are paid so little, it's an entry job and they're only there for a few months, maybe a couple of years. and then they're going on to something else somewhere
Can we
else. And
talk
so
a
they
little
don't.
bit more about that? Because I want to hear a little bit more about that being an entry job. I want to let you know the reason behind this is because I was not treated well by caseworkers, and they did seem to have a certain amount of disassociation, right? So they were just, they didn't care. They always seemed to be doing something else. Something was more important. So do you mind just kind of unraveling that
Yeah.
just a little bit?
Yeah, it's a fallacy in our society. Again, we underpay jobs that involve children.
Absolutely.
Teachers, caseworkers, all of that, right? We want to be this great nation, but we rank like 36, I think. We used to rank like 50th, but I think we've moved up a little bit. But we rank like 36th in developed countries in terms of child care, like how we care for children and how
Wow.
we
Greatest country in the world, people.
Oh yeah, and our protection of children, so safety of children, we are very low on the list of developed countries. And so when you're talking about child welfare workers, we underpay them. So yeah, it's going to be an entry job. And so yes, they don't know. They're not ready. The other thing is caseworkers tend to, or social work students tend to come out of college thinking, I'm going to save the world and work with families. And they're not told when they take the job that at least 50% of that job is going to be paperwork. And a lot of that is because legislators don't understand. So this is what happens here in Indiana. We had a big blow up with our director of child welfare and our governor. Did not like each other. The director left, said that children were going to die. Well, the legislators' response was, okay, we need more data. We need more data. So now all of a sudden all of the caseworkers here in Indiana have to spend like 70% of their time doing paperwork so that legislators can sort of understand what's going on, rather than the legislators getting off their butts and just going out into the field and see what's happening. They want paperwork.
Just I'll just say you put to rest something. I've been holding on to my anger. I'm like, why? And I know a lot of my foster alumni out there, you're probably thinking, oh, that's why my caseworker didn't seem to give a crud about me. I know that some people had CASAs that they still know today, and that's great. But if you want to be a court appointed special advocate, you're not getting paid, are you? I mean, maybe things have changed. But as far as I
No,
remember,
no,
it's a volunteer position. So
yeah.
and even
CASA's
they
volunteer.
maybe because they had less paperwork. But now I really appreciate this story because I remember you guys and you sucked. But now I get it. I understand why.
Yeah. Again, it all goes back to what we were talking about earlier. We only see half of the problem, right? We only see that it's our perception, and our perception when we look at our case managers is that they don't care. And I've had that perception too because I watch them walk in late to meetings.
Yep.
I
Or
watch
not show up
them
to court.
sit not show up to court. I've watched them sit back during those child family team meetings and not say a word. And a lot of that time is because they just got the case and they don't know what the hell's going on. I mean, I've here in Indiana, I don't know if it's gotten any better, but I had some problems with certain caseworkers, so I would try and go to their director. Well, I would be emailing a director, not realizing that person had quit, but their email address was still live. And so they weren't letting anybody know. Foster parents would tell me, I've got a new case manager. I don't know who they are. I don't know what their name is. I can't get a hold of anybody. Nobody took the time to say, this case manager left, and now this is who you call for an emergency. They were told nothing. How does that happen? And it's because the system doesn't give them enough money. It doesn't give them enough resources in
Or
order to
education.
do
Yeah,
their job
resources for sure. Yeah.
they need resources. Teachers need instructional aides to help manage a classroom of 35 kids. But we get that
Regardless.
because we
Yeah.
pay anything that has to do with children is underpaid in this society. And it's tragic. And it's just getting worse because
Yeah.
of this new administration. What is this going to do for our foster kids? I can't even tell you. I
I
may
don't
be out of a
know.
job. I don't know either. I
I
don't
don't know
know.
right now. It's so confusing what's protected and what's
Yeah.
not. I can't imagine it getting worse for kids, but I wanted to bring up a little bit more about legislation because I find myself running in a hamster wheel. You know what I mean? And I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm running toward that progress, but I don't really know how to apply it. I'm using my voice. I'm bringing amazing people like you together and onto a platform, sharing resources. But it seems like we are facing a boulder that we must push up a hill, and it's legislation. And really, we're in the middle of a 30-year failed case study, okay? Because 1997, let's say in 2 years, we're 30-year failed case study of the Safe Adoptions and Families Act, of the title, I think it's Title 4-E. You know, our Social Security, you want to protect that. Stop incentivizing the states for increasing the numbers of foster children. And why isn't that Title 4 going to the foster parents or directly to funds that the children are going? Why is that being matched for the state? There is so much legislation. And then what happens is you find out, and all you kids out there, you have sat next to the most annoying older person on the planet who goes, kids, they're so annoying. You guys are worst generation. Guess what? Stop making bad generations and then yelling at them. Okay? We are dealing with so much recovery. We're dealing with recovery from the 40s, 50s, and 60s still. There are pieces of legislation that have been in argument for 70 years. Let's focus on making the generation ahead. Stop fluffing us up with all of this crap you're going to solve. You're not solving anything. You're just talking about it for 70 years until you die and we're left with your problems. So if you want a good generation, if you want to talk to a kid who's not the part of the worst generation ever, change it for them, because you sure haven't paved any pathways for them to walk.
And I say that all the time, and I make people so mad. I'm very vocal on Facebook. And so I'll see a post and it'll be something about, millennials today, but you raised their parents, because I said that. And I'm like, well, you raised those kids. Well, no, I'm a grandparent. Okay, so you raised their parents
What'd you
to
do?
raise these kids to be right.
What did you do for us?
Yeah, well, and what did you teach your kids that they taught to those kids to be the worst generation? I mean, where did all of this individualism come from? It came from the boomers. We
Yep.
lost a sense of society in the boomer generation when
Yeah.
everything all of a sudden became about me, pulling ourselves up from the bootstraps and individual rights. And my biggest high horse is we talk so much in this country about rights, but we never talk about the responsibilities that go with those rights, right? Let's be real. We are
Absolutely.
all responsible for what happens in each day in this country. And if
Absolutely.
we don't take that responsibility and we blame something else, then we're not doing what we're supposed to do. So, I get on a high horse about this.
I
Quit
love it.
blaming the kids. And my experience with millennials and everything else is that they actually are much more empathetic than the boomers. And that's why our society is in the mess it's in today, because we lost that sense of community.
Yeah.
Everybody is
Yeah.
out for themselves.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
teaching their kids to think only of themselves. And
So
so
true.
that's where we're losing empathy, why we're losing emotional intelligence, because we're just sheep and we just walk around with our heads in the cloud and we don't really care unless it relates to us. And so we've got to get away from that. We've got to start thinking about every action we have affects other people,
Everybody.
not just ourselves, and especially our kids. And so when we go back into like legislation is never designed for the people, right? Legislation is always designed around money. That's
Always. Yep.
always what it comes down to.
Yep.
Always. Who's
Yep.
going to benefit? Who's going to get the most money? And a lot of times, like you said, when we privatize, we're not even talking about the state. We're talking about private people are making money off of suffering. Just look at the
That's why SSI is matching the funds, because foster care is
right.
privatized. That's crazy to me.
Yeah,
Okay, so how can you
it
have
is.
any
It's crazy.
nonprofits working for a system that is privatized in the way that it is? They're about as nonprofit as the NFL, a 501c4. Okay, they're considered a nonprofit too. We have to get things straight here. I mean, the fact that the prison system has been privatized since 87 and the foster care system has been privatized since 95, and increases in punitive charges and family separation, especially in urban communities. Okay. And that's who they were targeting anyway. But when you are poor, you have that almost mandatory community. You have to have it. So I really wish that it was stretching into other class levels.
Yes. And here's my biggest issue is I am a Christian. I was a children's minister. I still believe in God. I'm not exclusionary, so I don't think Jesus is the only way, but I am a Christian. Churches, you said, where do I go if I'm homeless? Why wouldn't you walk into a church? And
Thank
that's because
God.
they're not accepting.
We're going to have another
They're not
episode
accepting.
about this. I've written so many articles about this. And then you get the people, the churchgoers. Why do we have to suffer? I've had conversations like this on Facebook about when they were getting mad at a place down the road called The Mission, which does extraordinary work. Anybody can walk in. They do what they can. They're volunteers constantly. They get people from restaurants to volunteer and make these people dinner every single night. They're very well organized and they're off the streets. And you can also do your laundry there for free if you're anybody at a certain time. But people were complaining about it. And these are these good Christian people. And so I'm like, oh, give me that soapbox real quick. I got to stand on it. No, you shouldn't be putting the people in the mission out. What you should be doing is understanding your own mission and opening the doors of churches. Oh, they were coming back at me like, well, these aren't just regular people. What if they destroy it? I don't remember the what ifs. Okay. I've read the book. I don't remember Jesus's what ifs. I don't remember that. I mean, am I wrong? Was it in Matthew? I don't remember. But what I do remember was love thy neighbor. And then, so they had all these excuses. Well, they're going to need, supervision. They're going to need this and that. They're going to need, nobody's going to be trained to be there with them in the churches, not in my beautiful church. I don't want them to get that pew over there stained because that's where I sit with my family and I praise God. Okay. And I will pray for them, thoughts and prayers.
And with churches on every corner, we shouldn't have homeless.
Tax
right?
free.
Like there should be help. I asked somebody recently, they were like, well, I had to suffer. I had to pull myself up by the bootstraps, so everybody else needs to do it. And I'm like, okay, so if you had to suffer, wouldn't you want others not to have to suffer like you did?
Right.
Why do they have
You'd
to have
think.
the same bad experience as you?
Yeah.
My experience with the foster care alumni that I talk to is you guys are out there trying to change the world. You're doing podcasts, you're creating groups where other foster kids or former foster kids don't feel alone. All of my kids that I were working with had like really high goals. They wanted to be therapists, they wanted to be neuroscientists, they wanted to change the system. So there are certain states that are now employing people with lived experience. The UK has done an incredible job in
Championing.
opening up those doors for lived experience that you
Yes.
don't have to have a degree. Because that's the other thing right now. You not only have to have a bachelor's degree to be a social worker, you have to have a master's degree. But lived experience is the most important. So why are our social workers that are working with foster kids not former foster kids? Like,
Or
right?
parents. Some of them aren't even parents. I did not have a single mother. And all three of the caseworkers that I remember, and I'll always remember you. I'm coming after you, Shelley. But all of the ones I remember, the closest thing to a child they had was Shelley's pug. The other ones didn't even have a cat. I don't know what they took care of, but they had no idea what they were doing. And they absolutely resented any behavioral issues of my own. I mean, they were just my ride to and fro. They didn't even have to deal with me that
Right.
long. So I mean,
Right.
they weren't permanent, but every time I saw them, I felt worse about myself. They always criticized my behavior. Oh, I heard you were doing this. And you don't know me. You didn't even ask. You came here with all these accusations from an abusive foster parent.
Yeah, a 21-year-old coming out of college does not understand. They're, like you said, they've never even been a parent. So why are these entry-level jobs, right?
That really it's upsetting.
Right? It's very upsetting. It should not be. Absolutely. And so, yeah. So, lived experience, we need to like really start lifting that up. Let's start looking at how can we use people who have experience? How can we get them jobs that supposedly require a degree? When they already know it all. They don't need that degree. They might need a little training because we still have triggers and things like that, but you
For sure.
don't need a degree.
Rehabilitation. That's what we need. We need rehabilitation. We need to understand, and we do need that compassion. We need empathy. The isolation of our problems, that's the thing. And I know that you You understand this too. The beauty of the internet. Oh my God. And those older generation hated that too, didn't they? Why?
Oh,
Look what we
still
get to
do,
do now.
still do.
Look what
Yeah,
we get to do now. And
yeah,
you know why they hate it?
yeah,
Information sharing is dangerous for people that want life to, or society to stay the same. I love these conversations here. I love
yeah,
that we are going to reach my foster siblings still in care and our alumni who have aged out because they have the damn internet. I wish I would have had it.
yeah. Yeah, I remember I had was asked to create like a spring break camp one time for the group that I was working with, the licensing agency. So I created this spring break camp. And when the kids came, I just assumed they knew that it was all foster kids from this agency. I don't know why I made that assumption. They didn't know. And when they found out all of them were in foster care, all of a sudden it was like, wait, you're in foster care too? Wait,
Isn't
you
it? It's a
understand
great
what I'm
feeling,
saying?
actually. It's
And they
weird, but
were
it's
like, oh
great.
my, yeah, and so all of a sudden they had this community that they never knew about. And it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, because you are isolated. I mean, the likelihood that you're going to run into another foster kid in your school and
Who's
know
going to
about
tell
them
you?
is
Yeah.
really right. Yeah, is really low. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, you do feel
Yeah.
like you're the only one, and you're not the only one. But how do you ever get to know that? Who comes out and reaches out to you and says, "Hey, I understand what you're going through," and a lived experience. I can't say that. I don't have lived experience. I can't say I understand what you're going through. I can say that I'm going to listen and I can tell stories about other kids that I've heard from. And I will say, I think I'm a good listener. Not listening to respond, but just to listen, to hear the stories. And my kids, I do feel like when I was working for that licensing agency, because I was a better listener than a lot of the care workers, I heard things and I would have to report things to the care worker that they were never told because they were too busy filling out their paperwork
Yeah.
and getting their
And they're
boxes
mandatory
checked.
reporters. I've told my caseworkers some
Hmm.
things that should have ended people's freedom. And what happened was I got moved and asked not to talk about it. Here's what I got. I mean, we could get them in trouble, but you don't want to ruin their kid's life, do you? You don't want to take away their parents like you lost yours. And I'm like, yes, I do. Who are you talking to here? So, before we go, I've had a curiosity this whole time. You and guitars. Tell me about your musical experience.
I'm a singer. I took the guitar in high school and I play a little bit, but not. I just also just kind of like the look of guitars, but I am a singer.
Yeah,
So I took voice lessons in high school. Yes, I was a very privileged child. I very much owned that I was a privileged child. I sang and then I did a lot of music. I led music groups in churches and stuff like that. I would do solos and so
I
yeah.
love that.
My voice is not what it used to be, but yeah, my background is definitely. And mom made us take piano lessons. I hated piano lessons, but it did keep me in the world of music until I found my voice teacher in high school. That was just really amazing and really changed my life. Because I have recognized what I was given. I lived overseas for 4 years when I was in fourth through eighth grade, most eye-opening experience you can ever have, right? And a lot of people, a lot of Americans have never been outside their own state and they're missing out because they don't learn about other cultures. I just have had a lot of experience in my life and I'm emotionally intelligent enough to recognize that those things have really shaped who I am. There are bad experiences too, but I've just had a lot of support in my life that has helped me grow and be who I am and to be able to speak out and speak for people who don't
I
feel like
love
they have a
that.
voice.
And you know what
And
support looks like. So you are a
mhm,
perfect person to
yeah,
teach us, you know? I mean, we do need
yeah,
mentors that are not in survival mode. We need mentors that know what
yes,
real support looks like. So you might not be able to serve your purpose had you been a Foster Fierce alumni because a lot of us don't know what it looks like to be supported. People like you need to become part of our family. You need to help us because we don't have another perspective.
yeah, yeah. And we should be a community where you all feel safe enough to talk to somebody and have that support, and we just aren't. And that's sad. So, when you do find somebody that really seems to understand you, latch on to them.
That's good
Don't
advice.
suffer in silence. Don't suffer in isolation. Even if you only have, I only have a few really close friends. I really don't,
Me too.
have a big network of big friends, but I have people that are very important to me and that support me and build me up. Don't feel like you have to stay connected to people who make you feel bad about yourself, including family. You've already talked about that,
I
but
love that. That's good
those
advice.
separations, yeah, if you need to separate for yourself from somebody who's making feel you bad about yourself, do it because you're worth so much more. Everybody out there deserves to feel good about themselves. They really
Love
do.
that. I absolutely agree with you. And just like I said, for some of you guys, I mean, it's going to be impossible for me to ever truly, we'll never forget the things that have happened to us. But the more that we learn,
No.
the more that we learn about
Yeah.
ourselves, the more that we learn
Yeah.
about our own abilities. Boundaries are so important. Like Sharon's been saying, boundaries are important. Separation, separate yourself first and then develop your boundaries. Because right now you don't even know where they need to be, So you're just putting them up too much or
Right.
you're taking them down too loosely. So
Mm.
I want to say to the people who aren't alumni, but like you, understand what real support is and can pass that around.
Yeah. So, real support is active listening. Listening without thinking of what you're going to respond, listening without having preconceived notions of how a person should be. There are no shoulds, right? No shoulds. Active listening is listening to the person as they are and knowing that their feelings are real. We may find it overly dramatic, but they're real. They're real to the person. We don't understand. We've not been in those shoes. Even if you're a foster care alumni, you don't necessarily know what another alumni has gone through. All of those experiences
Yes,
are different. So just always be open to hearing and changing your mind and being actively participating and then also speaking out. And that's really hard for some people, but we can't change the system if we stay silent. And that's a big part of why we are where we are today is because too many people stay silent.
absolutely. Absolutely. And for everybody watching, I'm going to have all of those links, all of the people that we discuss, and ideas on how we can put this together into something, some functional form of a solution. I'm really reaching out to you guys as well. I want your ideas. I'm not the person that has all the answers. I'm the person with the platform where we can spread these ideas, we can share these answers, and we can maybe affect the right people, the policymakers, the people that we need to break their hearts a little bit because right now their hearts are covered in an icy mass. And if we have anything left in us at all in a generation, if we keep allowing this to happen, who knows where we will be. We have to rely on the generation that we are raising right now to be the change, and we can break that cycle, but we have to find our power to empower them or it's gonna keep happening. To my foster fierce siblings out there, thank you so much for tuning in. I want to hear your story too. IWAFosterkid@gmail.com. And remember, you can call me just to talk. You can email me just to chat. We don't have to have a reason to get together. You're my brother. You're my sister. I'm always here for you. And until next time, stay foster kid fierce.